Hey crafty people! Welcome back to my channel, and in case you're new here, I'm Sarah, also known as Craft Nerd because I'm a nerd who loves to craft. I do paper crafting, card making, junk journaling, and mixed media art. Let's get crafting! Welcome back. It's time for another mystery craft. So if you're new to my channel, what I did at the beginning of the year was put the name of a bunch of craft products on little pieces of paper, and I toss them in my Eeyore mug. And what I do is I pick out a product, and that's what we craft with for our mystery craft. So today I have pulled out embossing glazes. All right, so let me pull out some stuff and have a little bit of a think as to what I want to create, and we'll get crafting. So I pulled out some stuff so that we can do our embossing glazes. Now, if you're not familiar with embossing glazes, they are a Tim Holtz Distress Ranger product, and they are a translucent embossing powder. Most embossing powders are opaque, so you can't see through them, but with Distress Embossing Glaze, you can see the paper underneath. So that's something to keep in mind. And I've pulled out, I don't have all the colors, and they're all in Distress ink colors. But I do have some. I have stopped, I think I bought a set, like that was a box set, as my first set, and added a few colors after that because I don't use them often enough, but they are really cool. So I've also pulled out some papers to play with, and what I want to make is some journaling cards and tags for the Halloween journals that I'm working on. So that's why I pulled out Spice Marmalade, Seedless Preserve, Hickory Smoke, and Peeled Paint. Kind of wish I had Villainous Potion, but I don't. So those are the colors I pulled out. I also have out Walnut, Vintage Photo and Walnut Stain because I might decide to use those. So these are Tim Holtz backdrop papers, and I figured we'd have a play with those. I've also got some, this is Strathmore mixed media paper, and this is Arteza, is that it? Yeah, Arteza watercolor paper, and that's more of the Strathmore because this is a 12 by 9 paper pack, so I cut it down to 6, and then for the tags I did 3-inch wide tags, and then for the bottom two pieces I just cut it in half, so they're 4.5 by 6, and then the Arteza pack is 5.5 by 8.5, so I just cut them down to 4.25 by 5.5 for creating some journaling cards. Now for these guys and these guys, I think I want to do a little bit of stuff to the background because you'll be able to see the background through our embossing glaze. So I'm sitting here having a think what I want to do because I didn't think about the fact that, yeah, you can see through it, so you want to do something on the back wherever you're going to put your embossing glaze. So let's go ahead and grab. All right, so I want to do something to create some background interest for underneath the glaze. So I am grabbing my pad. I have got, this is from Tim Holtz and Stampers Anonymous Tiny Prints, which is CMS 460. Because we'll be able to see where we put the embossing glaze, what's stamped underneath. I want to do some stamping on some of these completely blank pieces. Some I may just leave plain. So yeah, let's see, what do I want to stamp with? I think I'm gonna stamp with archival ink, because what I'm probably gonna do, because the embossing glaze will also resist, is after I do the embossing glaze, do some wet techniques, and archival ink is waterproof, so if there's spots that aren't covered by the glaze, it won't be affected when we do some inking, if that makes any sense whatsoever. It's the end of, I worked today and I'm crafting after work because I really wanted to get started on this video, and so my brain's a little fried. So we're just gonna do, that's a really harsh line, but I think we can change it up. I should be inking just kind of the middle and going with that. That's what I should do, is something like that. So it's a little less regular. think I'm gonna add a little bit more like that, and some like that, and like that, just to kind of get it started. And I'm gonna set this aside. Okay, so I had a bit of a cleanup. I have grabbed, this is Shattered CMS 466, and I'm gonna stamp one of those with Shattered, and let's do it in, I think I'm gonna grab Hickory Smoke. Actually, no, I think I'm gonna go black. Let's go with black. So I'm grabbing Archival Ink Black Soot. All right, we got that one. Okay, for this one, I am gonna grab Faded Type, which is CMS 397. I think I'm gonna use this guy, and we're just gonna add it in a few spots, and I'm gonna go Black Soot again. Okay, I'm gonna set this guy aside. What we're gonna do next is, on this one, we are going to stamp with embossing ink, which I use Versamark, and I flipped it over because this is the watercolor paper. There's a rougher side and a smoother side. I'm going with the smoother side, and we're going to stamp with our embossing ink and add our embossing glaze to it. So the white will kind of show through a little bit underneath this one. So let me grab, now you can, of course, also stamp using a colored ink and add the embossing powder to it. But for this one, I'm gonna go Versamark, and I'm gonna grab the Seedless Preserve. And let me grab a scrap piece of paper, because you want to dump your powder on your piece over a scrap piece of paper so that you can save whatever doesn't stick to your piece. So let's get ourselves prepped. You have a little bit more wiggle time when doing this if you're using something like Versamark, or I know Distress has an embossing ink, because it's designed to dry slower. But you still shouldn't dilly-dally too much. All right, so I'm gonna do this. And I'm gonna take my little tool here and press it down. And now I'm gonna lift that off, set the stamp aside, move this over, and hopefully not get embossing glaze everywhere, because I've got my fan going because it's August in Florida. Didn't get a perfect impression, but it is good enough. And let's go ahead and put this back in. And so the next step with this one is to emboss it. So I'm gonna grab my heat gun, and I'm gonna grab some tweezers so I can hold it up off my table, because it embosses faster when the heat can circulate around the piece. And I'm gonna turn it on, and you really should let it warm up for a bit because it makes it go faster, but I seldom do that. I may have overheated this in a lot of spots because it's very, like, I'm not seeing the raised bits on this one. I may redo this off camera and see if I can get a better result, because I'm not loving how that's turning out. All right, that's our first stamped one. This one, I think I still want to go with the purple, but I think what I'm gonna do is grab Villainous Potion Distress Oxide. That should darken, because this is a little brighter than I would like. So let's make another attempt. I'm also debating, I think I want to pull out my Misty, because that'll let me restamp if I don't get a good impression. So we're gonna ink with Distress Oxide ink. And this one I definitely need to be speedy about. And, oh, I do not have enough room on this table. And I'm gonna emboss this one. All right, so we got that one done. Okay, so I am gonna grab a couple of the doilies. And this is doily CMS 254. I'm gonna ink them with Distress Oxide and Twisted Citron. And I'm gonna use peeled paint to glaze them. All right, hopefully this one's gonna emboss better. All right, this one embossed much better. So hopefully you can see that shine is where the embossing glaze is. Now there definitely were a few spots where it did not stick. So that'll be interesting when we go to ink these, what happens. All right, we're done with stamping. Let me have a bit of a cleanup. Then we'll do next steps. Okay, now for the next one, we are gonna use clear embossing ink and a dauber to apply the ink. And I've pulled out a stencil, and this is the Tim Holtz Halloween backdrop papers. I think it was from last year. And this is THMS 129. And I'm not gonna do the whole thing. I'm just gonna do some pieces. So we're just gonna go ahead and dauber a little ink on here. Woo! And then I'm gonna grab, I decided on vintage photo for this instead of one of the other colors, because I just thought the orange was gonna be too bright. I'm not loving the Seedless Preserve for Halloween. It's just not quite working for me. So let's do that, and let's do a little bit more up at the top on the other side. And I'm gonna kind of just push it down and hold this up so it doesn't mess up down there, and just add ink like so. And I'm gonna heat emboss this. Let's clean up our mess. So as you can see, you can clearly see what's underneath through the embossing glaze. Now, the last method, and actually I'll keep that there, that'll help with, that I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna grab some texture paste translucent. I'm gonna go deal with a dog who's barking. And what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna take my next piece and set it down. All right, and this is THMS 131, and I'm gonna do some stars going this way and stars down that way, I think. Although maybe, do I want to use that one? No, I think I'm going to use this one. We'll get some swirly stars. Now I am being a bad girl. I do not have a dish of water handy, so I'm going to have to, as soon as I do this, go clean my stencil. We're going to hold this down. We're going to apply translucent texture paste. Now you could use an opaque texture paste, but then you wouldn't see what's underneath. Although in this instance, because I'm just applying it on white, I could just as easily use the opaque texture paste. I do want some more down here. So I'm just gonna kind of hold it on like so and add a little bit more texture paste down here. What I am gonna do is I'm just gonna spritz this with some water to keep it wet while we do the next step. And I'm gonna do squeezed lemonade because they're stars. Now, with the texture paste, you've got to let the texture paste dry completely or it's going to bubble up. Now for this, I definitely don't want any bubbling up, so I'm going to set it aside, let it dry completely. Let's do one more plain one because I want to show you. I'm going to take, this is THS062, it's the pumpkins, and we're going to do multiple colors on this one. So I'm going to apply my paste. I'm gonna avoid doing those top pumpkins. All right, we're gonna lift this off. I'm gonna spritz it with water again because you don't want the paste to dry on your stencil. So that's why I'm spritzing it with water so that we can do the next step and then I can go clean them off. For this guy, what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in and I'm gonna grab a little peeled paint, got a little scoop, and I'm pretty much just gonna, I know Tim Holtz does it with his, like pinches it with his fingers, but I just have a hard time getting it out. And we're just gonna apply it to the stems. And now I'm gonna grab orange and do the orange on the pumpkin-y part. Since these parts are big, the pumpkin area is bigger than the stem area, I'm gonna use my little scoop to kind of cover them. I'm just gonna go back in anywhere that I didn't quite get and just add a little bit more, mostly in the orange areas. All right, since we've got some, all right, this I've got to set aside and let it dry, and I'm gonna wipe off the edges with my finger so that we don't have chunky edges. So this is gonna get set aside and I'm gonna let the texture paste dry completely. Now I have something somewhere for, I've done this before and I've done a video on it for Christmas stencil. So I know I've got a jar with some mixed color going on, but I don't know where it is. So this one, we're gonna add some texture paste and glaze to this one, and then I'm probably gonna do the rest off camera so that this video isn't ridiculously long, but I wanna show you how it works with that. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I've grabbed this one we stamped on. This is THMS075. What I want to do is I'm going to do some flowers over here. I think I'm going to use peeled paint. Pull that up. Set it aside for a sec. Like that. Clean this off. Woo. Get peeled paint on here. Shift this to the side because I want to add some more flowers at the bottom. thinking I may want to add another flower. Let's see how I can manage to achieve what I want to achieve. I kind of like to do one flower like right there. So this is going to be a little tricky because I've got wet paste, and I don't want to mess up what I've already done. So I'm kind of holding it up and stenciling that flower there. And I did get some that I don't want, so I'm just gonna use my finger to wipe it off. Let's add some more powder. Then what I want to do is kind of just add some paste in some spots on the side, and maybe come in with some like Hickory Smoke or Walnut Stain or Vintage Photo. I'm trying to decide what color I want, so I'm just kind of adding a little on there and being kind of haphazard, trying not to necessarily get it even. Just want to have a little bit more on there. All right, let's go with Decisions. Hickory Smoke. Let's give that one a try. Right, so that one needs to get set aside to dry. And I'm pretty much going to do the same thing for all the rest of the ones that I've pulled out. I'm going to add texture paste, add embossing glaze, and then let everything dry completely before embossing. Okay, so this is like the third time I'm restarting this part of the video because, yeah, I'm tired. My dad came over to help me clear out the way because I'm having a new air conditioning installed on Tuesday, and so my overgrown yard needed to be cleared out so they could get to the outside unit. All right, so off camera, I went ahead and I stenciled and added texture paste and the embossing glaze to these pieces. So I got that one. That one, I really like how that came out. This guy, which we stamped and embossing glazed over, and then this one. Now, for a bunch of them, I want to use my sprays to ink them up. These guys, I think I'm going to leave off. I think this one, I'm going to go more ink blendy on it and then maybe add some spritz too. So I'm going to set those guys aside. And I don't know how well these two are going to turn out because the embossing glaze did not do very well on it. I swear I didn't melt it all the way. I don't know what the heck happened with these two, but we're going to see what happens with them. I don't know how well they're going to do, but all the rest of these, I want to get some ink on them. And I've pulled out a bunch of sprays and spray stains and mica stains and and distress sweat spritz. I've got like all the things out and they're spread around. And I've got my splat box up to keep it from going everywhere. It's part of why I don't use sprays all that often. I really like this one, so let's start with this one. And I'm going to start by wetting it. And this is on the mixed media paper. And I'm trying to decide what colors I want to go with. So a couple things to keep in mind. If you're using distress oxides, distress mica stains, or the distress spritz, you need to shake them up. And this one's like leaking everywhere, so this should be interesting. Ooh, that's just making a mess. So I've got them laying on the their sides because it makes it a little bit faster for the mixing. Whereas my distress sprays don't require that. And I think I want to pull in, let's do some, that's pumice stone spray. Okay, so I've done pumice stone oxide. I just did a little O paper distress spray. This is pumice stone distress spray. Let's get a little hickory smoke in here. And then I think I'm going to add in a bit of a hint of black soot, maybe. As you notice, it kind of the spot. Let me see, am I on camera all the way? Okay, I'm just barely on camera. And then a little bit of Villainous Potion. And I'm gonna kind of move stuff around so that it gets everywhere. And we're gonna then wipe off what's on the embossed areas, because that's gonna resist. The embossing glaze is gonna resist the inks. So that, I'm gonna set that aside for a second and grab a cloth and come in, because if we wipe it off, and I don't want to add more heat to this because I don't want to melt the spray anymore, or the embossing glaze any further. So I'm thinking what I need to do is maybe just set it aside and let it dry, because it's very wet right now, and I don't want to take off more from the background. I just want to take it off from where it's currently on top of the glaze. So I am gonna go grab something so I have like a tray I can set these on off to the side. Got a bunch of those aluminum disposable trays you can get in the grocery store for, you know, cookie sheets. I am going to wet this one again, wet what we've got going on down here, and kind of go like this. And yes, it's getting a little muddy, but that's all right. And we're gonna go like so and apply some ink like that, because why not use what we've got on the table. And add a little bit more water, get things moving. And then I think I'm gonna do a bit of cleanup of this. And so what I usually have is I keep some plain sheets of watercolor paper handy to do as cleanup sheets, so that when I've got ink all over the place, I'm not wasting the ink. I'm just gonna use that to clean up all this lovely ink. And this I am actually gonna hit with my heat tool, because I don't have to worry about possibly melting any of the distress glaze. All right, so we're gonna bring this back over and probably give it a little bit more spritzy and do a little bit of Villainous Potion. Oh, that's a little heavy-handed. This is why I tend not to use my sprays, because I always end up getting more ink than I really want. I'm gonna hit with a lot of water to get it moving around. A little bit of Lost Shadow Distress spray. Grab a little empty tomb mica. I'm gonna hold it pretty far up to try and just get a little, or not at all, because I'm clogged. The one problem with mica stains, it's really easy to get your sprayer clogged. And let's pull in a little of the purple mica, which is Hocus Pocus. Ooh. And again, we're gonna spritz, get it moving around. There are definitely some spots that are going a little pink. I think this is very, very wet now. I'm gonna set this aside. Yeah, like that is just really weird where it's hitting the embossing glaze. It's going kind of pink. I'm gonna set it aside. We're gonna let that dry. I'm gonna be very upset because I kind of really liked that one if the weird pinkness messes it up. All right, for this one, I'm gonna go some Twisted Citron. And so we're gonna get it wet so stuff will move. I've got the Distress Spray Stain. And then I've got the Oxide. And I've got the Spritz. We'll probably add a little bit of the Spritz. And then, let's see. Spritz it with some water, get it moving a little bit. try and get it to move a little bit. I feel like it needs some splashes of maybe gray. Ooh, you know what, let's do a little black soot, but let's do it more judiciously, and we'll just do that. And then what I will do is grab, this is just water, and do that in a few spots and kind of let it run around a little bit. All right, I'm gonna set this aside and let it dry, and we'll add some more to that in a bit. All right, for this one, I wanna go more browns. So I've got some Vintage Photo, Tea Dye, Distressed Mica Stain, Decayed, and Fallen Acorn. And the Halloween micas are out again. I assume shortly the Christmas ones will be as well. So if you don't have them and you want them, they should be available in stores soon-ish. Well, the Halloween ones are, there's some Christmas colors, which I'm obviously not using right now. I'm adding some old paper as well. It's Decayed, and that's some Fallen Acorn. All right, that one's gonna get set aside. All right, so I cleaned up, and now I'm like, I think I want to go more browny with this one too. So I probably shouldn't have bothered cleaning up, but that's all right. We're gonna get it wet. Now, I don't think I said it. We're gonna add some old paper. Wet on with Distress inks if you're new to them. Wet on wet blends. Wet on dry layers. Let's do a little Vintage Photo. Add a little Lost Shadow too. And then let's grab the pumice stone. So by wetting my piece first, oof, I clearly am gonna need a new lid for this sucker. So by wetting it first, I'm getting the inks moving together, they'll blend together, all that good stuff. And then what you can go back and do later is add ink to it once it's dry, and those will be less blendy. Like, I'm okay with getting like a good funky blend going on as my base layer, and then I can decide if I want to add more color. So like this one, I'm gonna just go do its thing. Because like for my cleanup, what I usually do, let me show you with this, because I don't think I explained anything when I was doing it the first time around. Spray this, get it wet, and I'll move it around a little bit. I spray my paper, and then I kind of drag it through to get my base layer of color so I don't have white, right? Just to get rid of the white. Then what I do is I dry it. So we've got like a nice blendy background, and then what I can go back in and do is tap, and we get the spots because I'm layering onto something dry instead of wet. So that is something to keep in mind. Wet on wet blends, wet on dry layers. So if you want to build up different layers and shapes in your background, you're going to need to dry it or let it dry between, you know, applications of ink. And so that's what it looks like once it is all dry. All right, let's do this one, which is a bit of a hot mess, and see what we end up, if we can make something presentable out of it. I think I want to start with some black soot, because I think that's probably the route we're gonna go. Some lost shadow, just to kind of graze in the background. Hickory Smoke. A little bit of pumice stone. Let's do some pumice stone oxide. That thing's just all kinds of clogs and spraying every which way. And I think I'm gonna come in with some of the mica stains. I've got, this one is Frozen Fog. Let's add some Empty Tomb, which I think, did we not establish this one's clogged? Gonna add a little purple with the Ominous Twilight. Ooh, or a lot. Eek. Well, that one kind of took over. Let's pull in some Decayed. Oh, and I've got some Hickory Smoke oxide. Let's add a little bit of that. And a little bit Decayed. I know it currently looks like a hot mess. Don't worry. We're gonna do something with it. Actually, what I'm gonna do first is grab another piece of watercolor paper, get it wet, and do this so that we can peel off some of the color. That's kind of cool how the bats, because it's resisting, came up on there. That's kind of cool. Also gonna do that. I'm trying to avoid messing up my bats because I kind of like them. Okay, let's grab another one. We lifted a little bit of the ink off that got a little out of hand, and I'm gonna set it aside and let it dry completely, and then we can adjust. Running out of space. All right, let's clean this mess up. Yes. You know what? Let's try cleaning it up with this guy and see what we get. Kind of surprised that the Embossing Glaze is standing out as much as it is on this one, but not too mad at that, other than the fact that it is a very bright, like pinky purple. If I had realized I didn't have Villainous Potion Embossing Glaze, I might have purchased it before doing this video. I think we're gonna set that aside to dry. Like, I completely want to get rid of the white on this one. I think I want this one not to have any white showing, so let's make sure we get all of the spots that have white currently showing. I'll try to. All right, this guy's gonna get set aside. I'm gonna finish this cleanup. All right, this is the last one. I think we're gonna go to town spraying, and then I'm gonna start pulling back the other guys and we can take a look at them. And I think I'm gonna go crazy and do some orange. So I've got Carved Pumpkin Distress Spray, and I've got Carved Pumpkin Distress Oxide. I'm thinking maybe we pull in a little brown. Maybe do some Fallen Acorn Mica. And a little Vintage Photo, which I'm gonna spray from far away because I'm pretty sure that's the one that kind of goes. Whee! All right. And then I'm gonna spritz around to get things moving a little more. Now, if you're finding it's like pooling as you're doing something like this and you don't like the pooling and you want to take that off, you can just take a paper towel and dab some of that off. All right, I'm gonna actually I think I'm gonna set this aside, let it dry, and we can take a look and see what happens. All right, so these guys are pretty much dry, and see, now I can come in and wipe off the ink that's on top of the embossed glaze sections on that one, and can do that on this guy. Definitely still seeing some weird pink going on. That may require some like more focused attention, and this is still a little damp. I think I went a little heavy-handed with what I added on here. So I'm gonna set this one aside a little longer, let it dry a little bit more. Let's see, what else we got? This one we're gonna go ahead and wipe off. I think it's dry enough for the wipe off stage. And yeah, we lost most of that random flower stamping, which I think is pretty good. The bats look kind of funky because you can't really see the pattern of the flowers underneath, but they do affect the color of the bats. I don't know how well that's showing up. So that's kind of interesting. I think this one, I am gonna grab a little bit of water and tap some water on here. And give it a second, and then take my rag and do that. And it should lift up some of the ink. I think I went a little heavy on the mica stains, which may not lift up as well. A little bit. Like, there's just a lot going on in that back. Like the droplets of water are not showing up. All right, give it a sec. I think I'm gonna call this one done, but for decorating. So we're gonna set this one aside and just ignore it for a while. This one, I think I want to get some of the spritz. We're gonna use a little of the Distress Wilted Violet spritz, which is obviously purple. And I think what I'm gonna do is grab a block and spritz it on the block and not my piece. And grab my brush and dip the brush in so I can do it a little bit more controlled, so it's not quite all over the place. So yes, I got more on the emboss spots, but I'm gonna set this aside and let it dry, and then we'll wipe it off and see. I think I may want some black splatters on this, which is gonna require me to find some black paint because black soot's really not gonna show up. All right, let me set that one aside. We've got this one. I'm gonna use a little specimen and splatter specimen on. And I also think I'm gonna splatter, and this is gonna sound strange, since we're pulling in specimen, which has got green in it, the Distress Spritz Twisted Citron. So we're gonna get some green going on here. And as I did before, I'm gonna put it on my little block and use my paintbrush to apply it. Now, the reason I'm doing both is because the Twisted Citron Distress Spritz is translucent. There's no pigment in it. It's just the mica in like a clear liquid essentially. So it's going to be different on the page than the mica stains, which have pigment and ink. And I'm beginning to think maybe I want to do specimen on the other one. That specimen will work instead of getting out black. And I'm going to set it aside to dry, and we're going to get all kinds of interesting sparkle on here. This fellow, and get some more water on my brush. That might be a little too much water. All right, let's set that aside and let it Let's see how we're doing over here. Oh, we've got some serious puddles, so let's I think again we're gonna do some just water that I'm splattering on. And I am gonna heat tool it just a little bit to get those splatters to dry a little bit. And now I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna grab a clean paper towel, work a little bit better, and lift up. Don't know how well it's showing on screen, but it is pulling up some of the ink where the splatters are. I'm gonna do a few more, like over in this area where it got really dark. And then I'm gonna do some Spiced Marmalade Distress Spritz to add a little orange glow, and I'm thinking maybe a little Twisted Citron. Add a little green in there too. Alright, set him aside. Let's see what else we got over here. Alright, so we've got these three left. This one, still feeling a little wet. This one, let's clean off this one. See what will wipe off the... I think it's gonna need some specimen spritz or splattered on it. Maybe a little decayed. Let's see what that looks like. Not decayed on this one, but maybe on that one. Definitely gonna go a little bit of this here. Set this guy aside for a sec. Alright, set that aside. Let it dry. This one, I'm feeling like it's not dark enough so that the doily stamp is not standing out enough because it's so light still. So let's pull in, let's get some black soot going on. And I think I'm gonna spritz it with some water because we're gonna want some movement. So we're gonna go black soot, hickory smoke, and vintage photo, I think is what we need to add. And woo, a lot of black soot. All right, let's see what happens if we, it's not very, very wet. So let's, ooh, I just spilt water on my desk. Hold on. Eek, eek. I don't know if you can see at the top, the puddle of it coming up. I have a little cup that I was using for cleaning off the brush. And yeah, I just knocked it over completely. Water's got a lot of mica stain going on in it. So I'm kind of wondering, might make for some interesting splatters onto a piece of paper. All right, so I'm just kind of making a mess right now, but I think, ooh. So I dumped the rest of the water in the cup on this piece of paper because it had some mica stain in it, and then dripped some of that water onto this piece that I am now just getting wet, and we're just gonna let that dry. Okay, now for this one, I want to ink blend on it to create our spooky sky background. And my plan is I'm gonna put, I think his name is Otis, on for part of the decorating for this one. So I want to do it lighter and then going darker to the edge. So let's pull out, let's start with some, I'm gonna start with milled lavender because by starting lighter and then moving out, what it'll do is give us kind of a glow around him. So I'm gonna start with some milled lavender. now what we're gonna do is go a little darker, get some wilted violet in. And I'm not gonna do a ton of wilted violet because I wanna get really dark and the piece isn't very big. It's just to kind of help the transition from the milled lavender to our villainous potion, which is what I'm gonna pull out next. Now don't worry, the embossing glaze is going to resist the ink, so we'll be able to wash it off where the stars are. We'll wipe our stars off. And apparently I got some, I'm guessing, texture paste over there. Now to help further darken our sky, I'm going to grab a little Uncharted Mariner. Mixing that with the villainous potion really helps get us this like nice darky inky sky. And I'm gonna, because I do want it a little more purpley, I'm gonna pull in more villainous potion. Kind of blend over top of the Uncharted Mariner. And then finally, I'm going to pull in some black soot along our very edge. I think I may pull in some more purple along there just to darken that. And I'm just going to take a cloth and come in and rub over top of, it's not even damp, it's just a dry cloth, and because the glaze resists, I can just wipe the ink off the top of that. And then for this one, I'm also going to pull in some inks and just ink up those weird pink areas with some villainous potion. Just kind of hopefully darken them enough that they look a little less pink. Although I think definitely, I don't know if it's some weird reaction with the archival ink. Like, I don't know why we got the pink going on, but we do. We're just gonna come in, ink up as best we can to de-pink. And then any other pink spots that are still a little too pink, we'll cover up when we do the decorating. And I'm gonna also come in on this one and go over our embossed areas to wipe off any ink. All right, so we've got this background, this one. We've got the pumpkin one, which, let's see if you can see how well, like the sparkle. Oh, I am really liking adding that accent of the distress spritz. And then we've got this one, and then this one, which again has the distress spritz on it. We've got the two on the Tim Holtz backdrops paper. We've got this one, this one, this one, and that one. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please do all the things that lets YouTube know you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave me a comment down below. Thanks for joining me, and happy crafting.